Good morning. Thank you for joining us this morning at Forge Road Bible Chapel, both here and online. Open your Bibles with me, please, this morning in the New Testament to the book of Acts and chapter 18. As has been mentioned, today we begin 4 weeks of meetings to discuss the time that the Apostle Paul spent in the city of Ephesus during what we call his third missionary journey. Chronologically, the events that we are going to consider cover a span of 3 years. The significance of those events is that they changed the world. The story of these 3 years is dramatic. It takes place in one of the great metropolises of the Roman Empire. It is by far the largest city that Paul has yet reached on his missionary journeys. The story is full of ancient actors. It's full of Greeks and Jews. It's got Christians and Romans, and some teachers grounded in the Hebrew scriptures and others in books of pagan magic. It is a story of preachers and prophets and workers of miracles, a story that unfolds in pious synagogues and in busy markets, a story that pits tiny house churches against massive heathen temples, a story of new ideas smashing up against ancient traditions. It is a story that takes place in a city where pagan beliefs are entrenched, in a city thick with its supposed gods, angry gods, gods who had ruled the city and ruled the people in it for centuries, gods who governed every aspect of life, and gods fiercely determined to defend their turf. It is the story of how the gospel of Jesus Christ reached that city, and from that city it reached an entire province, and how, as Luke describes it, the word of the Lord grew mightily and prevailed. Now, I'm going to ask you to work hard with me over these next few weeks and maybe look at things differently than you're used to. We're going to begin in the book of Acts, chapter 18, and begin in verse 24.
Now, a certain Jew named Apollos, born at Alexandria, an eloquent man and mighty in the scriptures, came to Ephesus. This man had been instructed in the way of the Lord, and being fervent in spirit, he spoke and taught accurately the things of the Lord, though he knew only the baptism of John. So he began to speak boldly in the synagogue. When Aquila and Priscilla heard him, they took him aside and explained to him the way of God more accurately. When he desired to cross to Achaia, the brethren wrote, exhorting the disciples to receive him. And when he arrived, he greatly helped those who had believed through grace, for he vigorously refuted the Jews, publicly showing from the scriptures that Jesus is the Christ. And it happened while Apollos was at Corinth that Paul, having passed through the upper regions, came to Ephesus. And finding some disciples, he said to them, "Did you receive the Holy Spirit when you believed?" So they said to him, "We have not so much as heard whether there is a Holy Spirit." And he said to them, "Into what then were you baptized?" So they said, "Into John's baptism." Then Paul said, "John indeed baptized with a baptism of repentance, saying to the people that they should believe on him who would come after them, that is, on Christ Jesus." When they heard this, they were baptized in the name of the Lord Jesus. And when Paul had laid hands on them, the Holy Spirit came upon them, and they spoke with tongues and prophesied. Now the men were about 12 in all. And he went into the synagogue and spoke boldly for 3 months, reasoning and persuading concerning the things of the kingdom of God. But when some were hardened and did not believe, but spoke evil of the way before the multitude, he departed from them and withdrew the disciples, reasoning daily in the school of Tyrannus. And this continued for 2 years, so that all who dwelt in Asia heard the word of the Lord Jesus, both Jews and Greeks.
And may the Lord bless as we consider his word together this morning. In Acts 19, we are with Paul in his third missionary journey. Now, Paul had been commended by the church at Antioch, and each one of the three missionary journeys would begin from Antioch. Paul would each time come back to Antioch to report on his work and stay close to that church, which is an example that we and other brethren assemblies follow today. When Ford Road Bible Chapel commended Brad and Lindsay Sturm to the work of the Alaskan interior, they stay in close touch with us and we with them. Paul's first journey had lasted something more than a year, and it had focused primarily on the Roman province of Galatia. And shortly after that journey, Paul wrote the first of his letters that we have in our Bibles, and that being the epistle to the Galatians. Paul's second journey had been longer, and its focus had been in Macedonia and Achaia, and it was during the second missionary journey that he writes 1st and 2nd Thessalonians. In both of these journeys, Paul with John, Mark, and Barnabas on the first journey, with Silas and Timothy on the second journey, Paul was moving, constantly moving from city to city, moving from province to province. On the first journey, it was Perga, Pamphylia, Pisidia, Iconium, Lystra, Derbe. On the second journey, it was Troas, Philippi, Thessalonica, Berea, Athens, Corinth, the first visit to Ephesus, and with only one exception, never staying long in any one place. The third journey is different. On the third journey, Paul stays in Ephesus for 3 years, far longer than he stays in any one city. In Ephesus, he will teach and disciple and then send other men out to reach other cities in the province. From Ephesus, he will make short trips to other churches nearby. We know clearly that he makes a trip to Corinth during this time. It appears to me he also makes a trip to Crete. Luke writes that everyone in the province of Asia heard the word of the Lord. In Ephesus, Paul is, for the first time, developing a next generation to carry on after him, which is a big change for him. The development of a next generation, I think, is a sea change in the ministry of the Apostle Paul, and something that we're going to talk about as we go through this series. And during these 3 years in Ephesus, Paul also writes several of his letters. So many of the famous words that inspire Christians today. Now abide faith, hope, and love, these three, but the greatest of these is love. Let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus. If any man be in Christ, he is a new creation. For me to live is Christ, and to die is gain. All of that is written from Ephesus. From Ephesus, he will write 1 Corinthians and 2 Corinthians and Philippians. I think that 1 Timothy and Titus are written at about the same time, although I don't think from Ephesus. And so the story of Paul at Ephesus is told for us in a narrative history by Luke in Acts 18, 19, and 20. But there is much from 1 Corinthians and 2 Corinthians and Philippians and 1 Timothy that supplement that narrative and gives us a richer and fuller picture of the events as they happen. Before these years at Ephesus, the gospel of Jesus Christ was a seed on the wind. Its established base was in Jerusalem and in Antioch, but out in the Roman world at large, it was a seed on the wind. In Ephesus is where it puts down roots. Ephesus is the hub of the wheel that pushes the frontier of the gospel. All who dwelled in the Roman province of Asia, both Jews and Gentiles, heard the gospel. After Ephesus, Paul could say that from Jerusalem through to Arilium, which is essentially everything that you can see on that map, the gospel had been preached. And Ephesus is where the gospel's assault against the fortress of the pagan gods turns into large-scale, hand-to-hand, life and death combat. Altogether, this is quite a story. And the goal that I set for myself in my own extended course of study, and my goal for us together for these 4 weeks is very ambitious. We're going to do history. And I trust you're going to find that interesting and informative. And we're going to do doctrine. I trust you're going to find that intellectual and challenging. But my goal was more than that. I find myself always fascinated with the first generations of the church. As with the coming of Jesus Christ and the coming of the Holy Spirit, new understandings about everything that people could know about God were first being realized, like a whole new continent, a whole new world being discovered that nobody ever knew was there. My ambitious goal is that we can immerse ourselves into this story so much as we are able, we live it. We feel it. We feel the current of events flowing around us. We sense the conflict as these new ideas smash up against ancient traditions. And maybe most importantly, we share the excitement. We share the purpose. We share the urgency of the Apostle Paul. As in the words of one historian, he races on the edge of time. So, let's get started. The city of Ephesus was a big place. I mean, a really big place. It was about 5 times the population of Jerusalem. It's one of the biggest cities in the Roman Empire. Only Rome and Alexandria are substantially larger. It's the capital of the Roman province of Asia. It's the residence of the governor. It is the major seaport on the Aegean Sea. It is the arrival and departure point of everything reaching west. It is the hub of 2 major Roman roads stretching east and inland to the cities whose names would later be immortalized by biblical texts yet to be written. Cities like Smyrna, Pergamum, Thyatira, Sardis, Philadelphia, Colossae, Hierapolis, Laodicea. From its harbor, its famous Arcadian road led up into the center of the city. You can still walk that road, and I have. Merchants selling everything would fill those arcades on each side. The road led up to one of the greatest theaters in the ancient world with a capacity to hold 25,000 for plays and public events. The city had a stadium for games and circuses and spectacles. And then there was the most impressive and the most famous building in the city, the awesome temple to the goddess Diana, the patron god of Ephesus. When Paul was there, it had already stood for more than 500 years. It was the largest temple in the world. It was one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Paraphrase an ancient travelogue written by Philo of Byzantium about the 3rd century BCE. He said that he had seen the high pyramids. He had seen the hanging gardens of Babylon, the Colossus of Rhodes, the statue of Zeus. But when I saw the temple in Ephesus rising to the clouds, everything else was in the shade. People came from all over Asia. They came from all over the empire to see it and to worship there. It brought immense prestige and an immense amount of money into the city. It was the most visible symbol of a reality in that city and in all Roman Hellenized cities throughout the empire, the deeply entrenched worship and allegiance to the pagan gods who oversaw every aspect of life. Paul had left Antioch on this 3rd missionary journey in either late 53 or early 54 CE, and he headed west. We read that he went over the regions of Galatia and Perga in order, strengthening all of the disciples. Now, Luke's words that Paul is moving in order and that he's strengthening all of the disciples gives us a clear picture that Paul is visiting the churches that he had earlier established. He's moving deliberately. He's moving methodically, intentionally, making his way westward, most likely with Ephesus in mind as a destination point for this trip. Paul had been in Ephesus before during his 2nd missionary journey and had a good reception there. He had taught in the synagogue. He had reasoned there with the Jews, and they had wanted him to stay. He hurried on to Jerusalem. Very importantly, Paul had been traveling with Aquila and Priscilla, who he had met in Corinth, and they stayed on in Ephesus, and as we will see, they remained central to the gospel witness there. And so I expect that about a year after he had left Antioch, Paul arrived at Ephesus, and as he always did, he went first to the synagogue. Now, we need to take a few minutes and do some background history here. And I know from experience how much some of you really enjoy it when we do some background history. But recognizing in myself that I have the annoying tendency to be very interested in some very boring things, I will take a page from Nathan Gorman's book and try to do this next part in 5 minutes. By the 1st century CE, and actually for centuries before that, Jews had migrated and established communities outside of Judea. They were called the Jews of the Dispersion. More specifically, in Ephesus and the Roman province of Asia, they are part of the Western Dispersion. And as the name suggests, the dispersion was really dispersed. This people has made its way into every city, and it is not easy to find any place in the habitable world which has not received them. That is me quoting Josephus from the Antiquities of the Jews. He's writing in 93 CE, who's in turn quoting Strabo, who is a Greek geographer and historian of 2 generations prior. I told you this was going to be fascinating. Luke tells us in Acts 2 that devout Jews lived in every nation under heaven, and his list of places that follows specifically includes the province of Asia. James said that Moses is read in the synagogues of every Sabbath, in every synagogue, in every city, and had been for many generations. The importance of this cannot be overestimated. Known to God from eternity are all of his works. But the historical reality of the Jewish dispersion into the Hellenistic world in the centuries before Christ will be essential for the propagation of the gospel in 2 distinct but related ways. First, up to this point, they are the starting place for the Apostle Paul in almost every city he visits on his missionary journey. He always goes first to the synagogue. And while in almost every synagogue he will find opposition, still in every synagogue he will find Jews, men and women, who responded to his message. And there he will also find Greeks who had been drawn to the God of Israel, called God-fearers, ready to listen. And we're going to talk more about these God-fearers next week. Second, and just as important, when Jews migrated into the Hellenistic world over the generations, their languages changed with their surroundings. Just as in the early 20th century, immigrants came to America from all over. They came from Italy and from Russia and from China. And when they arrived, they were speaking Italian and Russian and a variety of Chinese dialects. But within a generation or two, they were all speaking English. So Jews migrating into the Hellenized provinces within a few generations were all speaking Greek. In John chapter 7, when Jesus told the Pharisees that he was going away and where he was going they could not come, they had no idea that he was talking about going to his Father in heaven. They thought he was talking about going to the Jews of the dispersion to teach the Greeks, meaning the Jews who then spoke Greek as a first language. So why is this a big deal? This is a big deal because as those Jews settled so thoroughly into their new community and settled so thoroughly into their new language, their ancient scriptures followed them. In about 280 BCE, the 5 books of Moses are translated into Greek. Over the next 100 plus years, the rest of what we call the Old Testament was also translated into Greek. These translations would eventually become known as the Septuagint, and I'll call it that because we're familiar with the word, although that title was not around during the life of the Apostle Paul. And Paul knows this Greek translation of the Scriptures. He knows it down to his shoes. Remember that Paul is not from Galilee. He's not like any of the 12 disciples. He's from Tarsus, the capital city of the Roman province of Cilicia. And although a Jew, he grew up speaking Greek as his first language, and the Scriptures as he learned them were that Greek Septuagint. And so Paul, in his letters, when he quotes the Old Testament Scriptures, almost always quotes the Greek Septuagint, not the original Hebrew. When Paul is preaching in the synagogues, as recorded in Acts, he quotes the Scriptures. He's always quoting the Greek Septuagint, not the original Hebrew. And as his message advances beyond the synagogues, and as it reaches the general Greek-speaking Gentile populace of the city, there is already a Bible, and I'm using that word very loosely. There's already Moses and the Psalms and the prophets and the history in the language of that populace. Think today of how important we consider to be the translation of the Bible into local languages. Think of how we at Forge Road have for years supported the work of Jerry and now Sue Foff at Wycliffe Bible Translators, and how essential it is to get the Bible into a language that people can read. For Paul, in his journeys and in his ministry at Ephesus, there is a common language, Greek, and there is already a scripture in that language. And that will be the intellectual foundation on which Paul builds his arguments, both his preaching during his missionary journeys and his letters. Okay, end of my 5 minutes. Let's get to Ephesus and start where Paul started, which is in the synagogue. Paul arrives in Ephesus. He went into the synagogue and he spoke boldly for 3 months, reasoning and persuading concerning the things about the kingdom of God. Note how Luke describes this. Paul reasoned with them. He sought to persuade them. Paul does not condemn or agitate. His appeal is not to fear or fanfare. He doesn't promise prosperity. He's not looking for an emotional response. This is in line with what we saw a few weeks back when we talked about Paul at Thessalonica on his second missionary journey. He reasoned with them from the Scripture, explaining and demonstrating that the Christ had to suffer and rise again, saying, "This Jesus who I preach to you is the Christ." Paul's message in the synagogue is, in a word, that the time for the fulfillment of the ancient promises has come. That the promises that God made to the fathers, he has fulfilled for us, their children, in that he has raised up Jesus. Near the end of this same third missionary journey, Paul writes his famous letter to the Romans where he puts it this way: "Now I say that Jesus Christ has become a servant to the circumcision for the truth of God, to confirm the promises made to the fathers, and that the Gentiles might glorify God for his mercy." Now, that God in truth was confirming to the circumcision the promises made to the fathers is something that should have received a very receptive audience in that synagogue. And there was even a sense throughout Israel and throughout the dispersion, and including in Ephesus, that the time for the confirmation of the promises was close at hand. Look back at the verses that we read as we began our discussion this morning. There was a Jew named Apollos. He was eloquent and mighty in the Scripture. He was well instructed. He was fervent in spirit. He had the doctrine right, though he knew only up to the baptism of John. What does that mean? He knows only up to the baptism of John. Well, John the Baptist had preached, repent for the kingdom of God is at hand. The time is near. It's not in some distant, who knows when future. It's close. The Messiah is coming, and he is right behind me. Seems that Apollos was going from city to city and eloquently carrying the same message as John. The kingdom of heaven is at hand, and the Messiah is on the doorstep. He preached this message in the synagogue at Ephesus, where he would have been heard by our friends Aquila and Priscilla. They hear Apollos. They realize that Apollos now has an old and out-of-date message, that events were moving faster than he was. They bring Apollos current, that the Messiah has already come, the time of fulfillment has already begun. And Apollos begins to vigorously preach Jesus as the Christ. Then we get a similar story. There in Ephesus are about 12 men who Luke describes as disciples. They also know about the preaching of John the Baptist. They're also convinced of John's message and were baptized to show their repentance and readiness for the coming of Christ. Like Apollos, they are running the old, now obsolete doctrinal software. And to demonstrate this, Paul asked them if they had received the Holy Spirit when they believed. And their response is, they haven't even heard if there is a Holy Spirit. And I think a better translation of that verse might be, they haven't heard that anybody had received the Holy Spirit. Paul brings them current, just as Aquila and Priscilla had brought Apollos current. And now these men have their own mini Pentecost, with the coming of the Spirit marked by tongues and prophecy. To Paul and to the other apostles, all of this was proof that the fulfillment of the ancient promises was happening and was happening now. New doors of opportunity, new doors of blessing, new doors of revelation were being thrown open in all directions. Paul's preaching to every Jewish audience throughout the book of Acts is very consistent, be it in Antioch or in Thessalonica or in trial before Agrippa. So I'm sure that this is what he's preaching in Ephesus. Paul in that synagogue at Ephesus would have reasoned that the prophets of Israel had said that the Christ had to suffer. Now Jesus had suffered unto death. In that synagogue, Paul would have reasoned that the prophets of Israel had said that the Christ must rise from the dead. And now Jesus had been risen and raised not as a solitary event, but as the first fruits of a new harvest. In that synagogue, Paul would have reasoned that the prophets had said that the Spirit of God would be poured out, and at Pentecost, the Spirit had come, and his working was evident even in their own city. All of these were signs that the fulfillment of the promises that had been given to the fathers were being fulfilled and that the last days had begun. And there was another thing, another principle that Paul pulled out of those ancient prophets. The prophets of Israel had said that one day the people of the nations would turn to God. This is from Isaiah 45. I put up an English translation from the Greek Septuagint. This is not a quote from the Hebrew text, but it's from the Greek, which is the text that Paul was reasoning and persuading from. And I put that up so that you can see the Greek. The prophesied salvation of the nations was not that they would convert into Israel. Those being saved were not going to be included within Israel. They were not going to be circumcised. They were not going to keep the Sabbath. They were not going to keep the whole of the Torah. They would not take the gospel and just incorporate it into their own belief structure and just add Jesus to the pantheon of greater or lesser gods that they were already worshiping. The language of the prophets is that they would turn to God and glorify him for his mercy. And this is the language that Paul and the other writers of the New Testament pick up as they describe how salvation would come to the Gentiles. It's not a point that we make often in our preaching and teaching, but once you know to look for it, then you see it all over the place as the apostles pick up the prophetic cadence. Here is Paul. The first quote is Paul and Barnabas at the missionary journey in the city of Lystra. The Spirit of God has done a miracle through them there. The people of the city see this and they say that the gods have come down to us in the likeness of men. The priest of Zeus gets ready to make sacrifices to them. Barnabas and Paul hear this. They tear their clothes. They ran in among the multitudes and they cried out saying, "Men, why are you doing these things? We also are men with the same nature as you, and we preach that you should turn from these useless things to the living God who made the heavens, the earth, the sea, and all that is in them." And then there is Paul writing to the Thessalonians, saying that they turned to God from idols. And here is Paul before Agrippa, and he's describing his message as the apostle to the Gentiles, that they should repent and turn to God. And there is James at the Council of Jerusalem. We should not hinder the Gentiles who are turning to God. And by the way, just because I'm right here, this is that same text from Isaiah 45 from the Septuagint, just adding the next verse, verse 23. By myself I swear, my word shall not be frustrated, says the Lord, that to me every knee shall bend and every tongue shall swear. That sound familiar to you? What does that sound like? Every knee shall bend, every tongue shall confess. What does that sound like? That sounds like Philippians chapter 2, which Paul wrote from Ephesus. Again, see how he picks up the cadence of the Greek translations in the scriptures which he had been raised. To Paul and all of the apostles, all these things, the suffering of Christ, the start of the resurrection, the coming of the Holy Spirit, the turning of the nations, these were all clear indicators that the word of the Lord was being fulfilled, that the old was passing away, and that a new world was coming. Here are Paul's words written while he was in Ephesus, and he's writing here to the Corinthians. But this I say, brethren, the time is short. The form of this world is passing away. Now all these things were written for our admonition, upon whom the end of the ages has come. The finish line may not yet be in view, but we're in the last mile of the race. Paul was in that synagogue for 3 months, reasoning and persuading, and some were convinced. How many, what percentage, we don't know. But Luke's last word is that some were hardened and did not believe, and spoke evil of the way. What was the primary point of disagreement? We don't know. Maybe it was that the Messiah would suffer and die and be raised. Maybe it was that the Gentiles could now turn to God and receive acceptance and mercy and salvation and blessing. Maybe it was all these things. But Paul departed and withdrew the disciples. Now, I am not certain of the import of those words. I don't know if this is an event specific only to Ephesus or if it means a more substantial break. Paul still had a great burden throughout his life for Israel, and he still identified himself as a Jew. But I will note that so far as the record in Acts is concerned, so far as the rest of the New Testament, Paul was never in a synagogue again. He's never in a synagogue in Ephesus. He's never in a synagogue anywhere else. And whether this is a local or more substantial break, Paul withdrew. And more than that, he withdrew the disciples. Not only did he leave, but those of this new faith left with him. In 1 Corinthians, again written by Paul from Ephesus, he writes about the church that now meets in the house of Aquila and Priscilla in Ephesus. And I suspect that there are now many churches meeting in houses throughout that city, with Jews and Greeks meeting together, worshiping together, learning together, becoming one new people together. In his farewell to the Ephesian elders in Acts 20, which will be our subject in the fourth week of the series, Paul says that during those 3 years, I taught you publicly and from house to house. And the reference from house to house, I believe, refers to the churches in the houses like that of Aquila and Priscilla that were formed and met throughout Ephesus. Paul himself begins teaching daily in what Luke describes as the school of Tyrannus. Now, we know essentially nothing specific about the school of Tyrannus. Where it was, how big it was, who came, how many people came, and endless speculation has flooded in to fill the absence of actual knowledge. We know that it was common for teachers and philosophers and lecturers to rent halls and charge an admission fee and provide a public education to whoever would come. First person to ever do this was Plato, who founded what he called the Academy in 387 BC. Aristotle also had done this with other Greek, as well as other Greek teachers. This is what Paul is doing now. He is reasoning. There's that word again. Reasoning daily, which I suspect means every day except the Sabbath. Teaching publicly in the school of Tyrannus and then in the house churches when they meet. There's a reliable historical source that Paul would hold these open classes from the 5th to the 10th hour of the day. That means what we call 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. I don't think Paul is sustaining himself financially by teaching in that school. In Acts 20, he says that these hands have provided for my necessities, which sounds like work that is physically strenuous. The workday began at 6 a.m. And so from 6 to 11, Paul worked with his hands. Most likely he sold tents in the marketplace, made and sold tents in the marketplace. Then, as the heat of the day arose and the outside businesses quieted, he spent the next 5 hours teaching, instructing, reasoning. It's from Ephesus that Paul writes his famous words about a Christian being like a runner in the race, and now he is in full sprint mode. He has a full daily workload. He's teaching every day in the school of Tyrannus. He's teaching in the churches house to house. He is in all-out sprint mode. He is pouring the gospel into these new disciples, both Jews and Greeks. He is pouring in the exegesis. He is pouring in the reasoning. He is pouring in the doctrine, both of the church, both of Christ and of the church. He's pouring into them that God's promised resurrection has started, that Jesus Christ is raised as the first fruits of those who would be his, that the promised outpouring of the Spirit has begun, and that we who are in Christ have the Holy Spirit now. That we who are in Christ are in his kingdom now, and if we are in it now, our lives should show it now, just as much as our faith declares it. This continues for 2 whole years, which is already the longest Paul has stayed in any one city, at the end of which he said, I have not shunned to declare to you the whole counsel of God. I'd like to go to that school. And it's more than the doctrine. And it's more than the exposition. Paul is pouring into them the urgency, the sense of purpose, the passion for a godly life, the passion for the cause of Christ, the ministerial zeal. He's pouring himself into these Christians. It's from Ephesus that he writes, be followers of me, even as I am of Christ. And through him and through them, the gospel is expanding outward, now growing exponentially, reaching an entire province. It's not just wandering itinerant preachers in small scattered churches anymore. The message that changed lives is now pushing hard against the established order of society and becoming the greatest force for godly change the world has ever known. And it still is. For today, we, like them, share in the resurrection life of Jesus Christ. We, like them, can live in the newness of the Spirit and not in the oldness of the letter. We, like them, can know the whole counsel of God. We, like them, can share the same urgency, passion, and expectation and anticipation. But there was a conflict brewing, where these new Gentile Christians might live like they're in the coming age. But Ephesus is still Ephesus. And one thing there is certainly no place at all for in the kingdom of Jesus Christ. And so no place at all for in the lives of these new believers was the multitude of the heathen gods that ruled the city, Diana first among them. These new Greek believers had all been born into their obligation with their supposed gods, and the gods still ruled every aspect of the city. The gods still demanded respect from their subjects and were enraged by what was happening in their city. And so next week, we'll talk about another aspect of the revolution of thought that was happening at Ephesus in part 2 of our series, An Idol is Nothing. Thank you for listening to me today. I trust that the Lord will bless the work. I trust that the Lord will bless the work here. I trust that the Lord will give us an open door for the preaching of the gospel here, for the edification and the building up of those who believe. Let's pray. And Sean, I will give it back to you. Our Father, we thank you for the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ. We thank you for his goodness, for his mercy towards us. We indeed fulfill those ancient words, and we glorify you for your mercy. We thank you, Father, for your word, for its instruction to us. We pray, Father, that we together would realize and recognize the new life that has been given to us, the new life that is before us, and the message which changes lives and changes cities. We pray, our Father, that we would daily be renewed in these things. We give thanks to you in all things, in the name of your Son. Amen. Thank you for listening to me today. Lord bless you this Sunday.